It was a crisp Tuesday morning, and I was already running late for work, my coffee sloshing in its travel mug as I hustled out the door. Levying in Pinewood Grove, a picture-perfect suburban neighborhood with trimmed hedges and identical mailboxes, I'd grown used to the quiet routine of my daily commute. But that morning, as I approached the four-way stop at Elm and Cedar, everything changed. I pressed the brake pedal, same as always, expecting the familiar resistance. Instead, my foot sank straight to the floor. No resistance. Nothing. My heart lurched as my car barreled forward at 25 miles an hour, right into the intersection. A red SUV was coming from my left, and I yanked the steering wheel hard to the right, missing their bumper by a hair. Their horn blared, a sharp scream in my ears, as I slammed on the emergency brake and cranked the wheel toward the curb. Tires squealed, and my car shuddered to a stop on someone's pristine lawn, the engine still humming. My hands trembled so badly I could barely turn off the ignition, my pulse hammering in my throat. 3 hours later, I stood in Tony's auto shop, watching the mechanic Joe slide out from under my car. His face was grim, his hands greasy as he wiped them on a rag. "Someone cut your brake lines," he said, his voice flat but heavy. "Clean slices, probably with a sharp tool. This wasn't wear and tear. Someone wanted your brakes to fail." My stomach dropped. I'd been Levying in Pinewood Grove for about a year and a half, a place where every lawn was manicured to perfection and the HOA ruled with an iron fist. The HOA president, Linda Harper, was a force to be reckoned with, a 50-something interior designer with a sleek bob and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She patrolled the neighborhood in her silver SUV, a self-appointed enforcer of rules that dictated everything from fence heights to the shade of your front door. Linda didn't just enforce standards. She lived for it, her clipboard always at the ready. My trouble with Linda started 6 months earlier when she decided I was a reckless driver. I'd never had a speeding ticket, never been pulled over, and not a single neighbor had ever complained. But Linda, armed with a stopwatch and an inflated sense of authority, clocked me going 32 in a 25-mile, an hour zoning a whopping 7 miles over the limit. To her, that was enough to brand me a danger to society. It began with a formal HOA violation notice taped to my door, written in her signature teal ink, accusing me of endangering kids and pets. I thought it was laughable. Kids? Pets? I barely saw either on my morning commute. When I tried to explain at the next HOA meeting that my DRIVYing was normal and my commute to the city was long, Linda shut me down with a flick of her wrist, announcing to the room that some people didn't understand rules applied to everyone. The other residents squirmed in their seats, clearly wanting no part of our brewing feud. That's when Linda's campaign against me went from annoying to unhinged. Bright orange sticky notes started appearing on my windshield. "Slow down before you kill someone," or "Your reckless driving is being reported." Every morning at 7:15, when I left for work, she'd be at her front window, pointing what looked like a radar gun at my car. A radar gun. She bought one online, despite having zero legal authority or training to use it. She'd stand in her driveway, decked out in a neon safety vest, jotting down license plates in a notebook like some wannabe cop. When I confronted her, she claimed she was conducting a neighborhood safety study and insisted the police had given her permission. I called the station to check, and the officer I spoke to chuckled, saying no such permission existed and that private citizens couldn't legally play traffic cop. He suggested I document her BHVY, or in case things escalated. I thought he was being overly cautious. I was wrong. Linda's obsession hit a new low when she started tailing me to work. I'd glance in my rear VYEW mirror and see her silver SUV lurking a few cars behind, all the way to the highway on-ramp. She claimed she was just heading in the same direction for her design business, but when I varied my departure times, she was always there, ready to follow. Then came the scratches. One morning, I noticed fresh marks near my tires, concentrated around the wheel wells where the brake lines ran. They were deliberate, made with a metal tool. I snapped photos and called the police non-emergency line to report vandalism. The officer who took my statement was kind, but said without witnesses or VY Deo, there wasn't much they could do. He recommended a security camera and warned me not to park on the street overnight. I nodded, promising to look into it, never imagining someone would be bold enough to sabotage my car. That Tuesday morning, when my brakes failed and I nearly crashed, it all clicked. The scratches, the notes, Linda's fixation on my DRIVY and JIT wasn't just harassment anymore. It was dangerous. From Tony's shop, I called 911, my voice shaking as I explained everything to the dispatcher. Within 30 minutes, Detective Sarah Coleman arrived, her face serious as she inspected my car. She photographed the severed brake lines and listened as I recounted Linda's escalating behavior, or showing her the stack of sticky notes I'd kept. When I mentioned the scratches near my tires, her eyes narrowed. Tampering with brakes is attempted vehicular sabotage, she said. That's a felony. If we can prove who did this, they're looking at serious time. Detective Coleman asked about neighborhood cameras, and I remember my neighbor, Mrs. Ellis, had installed a high-end system after a package theft. That afternoon, the detective called with big news. Mrs. Ellis's footage showed a figure crouching near my car at 2 a.m., 3 days before the incident. The person worked under the vehicle for several minutes before slipping back toward Linda's house. The lighting was dim, but the figure's silhouette and clothing screamed Linda. When confronted, Linda denied everything, then pivoted, claiming she was checking my tire pressure out of concern. Detective Coleman wasn't buying it. Checking tires at 2 a.m.? With no mechanical know-how? Please. A search warrant for Linda's garage sealed her fate. Police found wire cutters matching the cuts on my brake lines, gloves with brake fluid residue, and a notebook filled with deranged entries about my DRIVYing. She'd logged my every move, departure times, estimated speeds, even theories about how I was corrupting the neighborhood. The final pages outlined her plan to force me to drive safely, with chilling references to corrective action. Detective Coleman laid it out. Linda faced charges of attempted vehicular sabotage, criminal mischief, and reckless endangerment crimes that could land her in prison for years. Her arrest was a spectacle. On Thursday morning, as Linda prepared to leave for what she called a client meeting, Detective Coleman and 2 officers knocked on her door. Handcuffed in her own driveway, she screamed that she was protecting the community, that I saw was the real threat. Neighbors gawked from their porches as she ranted about reckless drivers, her voice echoing down the street. The woman who'd ruled Pinewood Grove like a dictator was now a felon in handcuffs. The fallout was swift. The HOA called an emergency meeting, voting unanimously to oust Linda and suspend all enforcement pending a policy overhaul. Residents were stunned, whispering about how one person had wielded so much power unchecked. At her arraignment, Linda pleaded not guilty, released on a due law $10,000 bond with orders to stay 500 feet away from me. Her lawyer tried to spin her as a concerned citizen, but the judge wasn't impressed. The prosecutor laid out the EVY Denke, the notebook, the tools, the footage. If Con VY Ted, Linda faced up to 8 years behind bars. As the judge spoke, her face drained of color, her hands gripping the table like she might collapse. Pinewood Grove hasn't been the same since. I still drive those streets, but every time I brake, there's a split second where my heart skips, wondering if it'll hold. Linda's obsession nearly cost me my life, all because she thought 7 miles an hour was worth a vendetta. Now, I'm left wondering, how far would she have gone if she hadn't been caught? What do you think? Did Linda genuinely believe she was SAVYing the neighborhood? Or was this just a power trip gone wrong? Should HOAs have this much control over our lives? And what's the line between enforcing rules and becoming a VY vigilante? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if this story got your blood pumping, and subscribe for more real-life drama. Let's keep this conversation going.